So Scientology, kind of a crazy idea. It's made quite a name for itself with the mysterious scandals surrounding it. It's even been disputed whether it should be categorized as religion or a lifestyle. So there's a lot of gray area. Today, we're going to jump right in and learn more about, starting with the most basic question: what is Scientology? Scientology is a religious organization that was developed in the 1950s. It all started with a sci-fi writer named L. Ron Hubbard, who established a series of ideas and beliefs called Dianetics. Dianetics was concentrated on the relationship between body and mind, or how one entity affects the other. Hubbard went ahead and established his system as a religious order in 1953, and from it came the official Church of Scientology.
The most confusion tends to set in when trying to understand the core beliefs of Scientology. The basis of mind and body relationship that Hubbard discussed in Dianetics is that the mind is clouded by traumas that keep humans from experiencing reality. There's something even deeper on Scientology beliefs about humanity. Essentially, Scientologists believe that humans are immortal alien beings that have been trapped on Earth in a human body. They are major advocates for past lives as well. So anyways, these immortal aliens, called Thetans, have more supernatural abilities to control aspects of life, like time and space. They can only regain their full capacity when they escape their human forms. Scientologists have a way to work toward their goal of regaining their full capacity. A process called auditing, similar to a Catholic confession, works to locate spiritual difficulties and work on healing a person. It is most commonly a one-on-one process in which the auditor works to help a person understand the universal principles of affinity, reality, and communication. There is also a series of classes Scientologists can take to work on spiritual healing that have been known to be very expensive.
Scientologists don't have a specific doctrine, but they do have a set of rules they follow. The most basic principle of life is survival. In the Scientologist order, survival is broken down into 8 human urges, which are called the dynamics. The first dynamic is called self, with a focus on survival as an individual. It concentrates on the body and the mind reaching the highest level of survival. The second dynamic is known as sex. It is broken into 2 categories: the urge for sexual relations and the urge for family units. Dynamic 3 is a group dynamic, focusing on the survival of a group. The mankind dynamic is 4th, with the urge to survive with all of mankind in unity. The 5th dynamic is the life forms dynamic, which on a broader spectrum focuses on nature's survival with all of life and all life forms. The 6th dynamic is the physical universe, or MEST for short. MEST is an analogy standing for matter, energy, space, and time. The 7th dynamic is the spiritual dynamic, which focuses on the spirit. The 8th and final dynamic is known as infinity. It refers to the beyond, or the greater being. It is the highest peak of survival, and encompasses what is known as the allness of all. So in conclusion, Scientology is basically a religion that helps people use scientific approaches to really understand their fullest potential. Believers believe that they reach this potential when they understand themselves and their true relationships to the physical universe devoted to the Supreme Being.
World religion, Taoism. The ideas of Taoism were first conveyed by an ancient Chinese philosopher named Lao Tzu in roughly 600 BC. Lao Tzu authored a text which would become the greatest pillar of Taoist beliefs, entitled the Tao Te Ching. This sect is mostly popular in China, however there are over 12 million Taoists worldwide. Taoism is similar to Buddhism insofar as the fact that they are both better classified as philosophies rather than religions. Taoists can be atheist, agnostic, or even religious people. The most fundamental belief of Taoists is a belief in what is known as the Tao. The Tao literally translates to the way. This term refers to the natural order of the universe, which all people dwell within, inside of which they have their being. Many liken this idea of Tao to a flowing river. Taoists see themselves not as being in the river, but being one with the river. From this point is where the idea of Wu-Wei emerges. Wu-Wei is simply the idea of action through non-action. It states the best thing someone can do is to go with the flow of the Tao by choosing not to act altogether. Going against the current of the Tao makes life more difficult and less fulfilling. Taoism provides the groundwork for a very distinctive lifestyle. In their lives, Taoists value simplicity above all else. It is important for Taoists not to overthink things or to be overly analytical of life. They place emphasis on spontaneity and always striving to live in the moment rather than dwelling on the past or looking forward to the future. Taoists believe that death is simply an aspect of nature. It is not a punishment or curse, but instead part of a natural cycle and part of the Tao. Likewise, they do not have a traditional view of sin. They believe that the universe is amoral and therefore actions cannot be identified as good or evil. Taoism is extremely different from Catholicism in many ways. The greatest difference between the two is that Taoists typically do not believe in God, or at least do not seek out a God. This is directly tied with their belief of attempting to live in the moment. Furthermore, Taoists do not have any sort of hierarchy or structure like the Catholic Church does. Most Taoists act independently from one another and cultivate their own beliefs and ways. The main belief that is shared between Catholics and Taoists is the basic belief of an omnipresent force acting in all of existence. The difference is that Christians identify this force as God, while Taoists identify it as the Tao.
Sikhism began in the year 1459 CE, when it is believed that God revealed himself to a man named Guru Nanak in the Punjab region that is now Pakistan. The fundamental beliefs of Sikhism are outlined in the Mool Mantra, a prayer consisting of 13 crucial points. There is one God. He is the supreme truth, is without fear, is not vindictive, is timeless, eternal, is not born, so he does not die to be reborn, self-illuminated. By Guru's grace, he is revealed to the human soul. Truth was in the beginning, and throughout the ages. Truth is now and ever will be. Worship takes place in a temple, and is called Gurdwara. It is typically led by a Granthi, the Sikh version of a priest. Gurdwara consists of singing and reading passages from their sacred scripture. According to Sikh scriptures, Sikhs are to perform several ascetic practices and to wear or carry with them the 5 Ks as signs of devotion. Kesh, unshorn hair, a symbol of dedication to God. Men wear a turban. Kanga, comb, a symbol of cleanliness and purity. Kacha, short pants usually worn under the outer garments, a symbol of chastity and moral living. Kara, a steel bracelet worn on the right hand as a symbol of allegiance to the Guru. And Kirpan, a short sword, the symbol of an unconquerable spirit. Sikhs believe in reincarnation, meaning that good or bad actions in one life determine the life form one takes in the next life. The primary sacred text in Sikhism is the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. It contains the teachings of the 10 Gurus, and along with the Sikh community, which is considered to be the 11th Guru, it is called the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. Sikhism shares the Hindu belief in karma, however it rejects the idea of the caste system. Sikhism is also comparable to Islam, as it centers around the notion of a single all-powerful God, and sees him as a father as well as a creator. It also condemns the worships of idols and encourages helping the poor and needy. It also shares a similar creation story in which God creates the universe through sheer will. However, Sikhs believe that followers of all religions can achieve salvation, while Muslims believe that only Islamic converts can enter paradise. Also, Sikhs, unlike Muslims, do not believe that any holy scripture takes precedence over another. Sikhism shares few beliefs with Christianity, those being that there is one God and in the human condition, agreeing that we struggle between our human tendency towards self-centeredness and the call to living according to God's will rather than our own. Sikhs and Christians share a different relationship with God. Sikhs believe that human salvation depends upon a mystical union with God, while Christians on the whole have been more particular about maintaining a clear-cut distinction between God as creator and human beings as one of God's creations. The final difference between Sikhism and Christianity is the nature of their founder. For Christians, Jesus is God and the defining revelation of God. For Sikhs, Guru Nanak, on the other hand, received God's revelation according to Sikhs, but was not himself that revelation.
Hey Scott, when did Unitarian Universalism begin?
So Unitarian Universalism was consolidated into one singular church in 1961. It used to be the American Unitarian Association, then that was founded in 1825, but it was also combined with the Universalist Church of America in 1793 to form one organization called Unitarian Universalist Association in May of 1961.
Cool. Well, what do they believe in, Scott?
Well, the Unitarian Universalists' fundamental beliefs consist of various liberal Christian beliefs, and they retain some Christian traditions, but mainly focus on personal spiritual practice with a creedless approach to faith development. They don't have like a dogma as the Catholic Church does. But individual beliefs differ among congregants and different churches based on their devotion to the covenant that they believe in. But all Unitarian Universalist churches believe in the 7 principles and embrace the 6 sources. So their 7 principles are the inherent worth and dignity of every person, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, acceptance of one another, and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And so those are like 7 core principles they believe in. But the 6 sources that they use to try to get these beliefs are direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Words and deeds of prophetic people, which challenge us to confront powers and structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life. Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. And finally, spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions, which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. So those are like the 6 sources that they draw their beliefs from, combined with the 7 principles that they form from those sources.
So you would say they're more spiritual than religious. Based on that, then, how do they worship, Scott?
So Unitarian Universalists have a couple ways of worshiping. A lot of it has to do with individual practice and spiritual development through not necessarily prayer, but more like meditation and Buddhist teachings. But as a congregation, they have services of worship, usually occurring on Sundays, similar to Christianity, and they resemble Protestant worships, and with sermons and the use of text with hymn singing, but they don't really recognize Christian sacraments and don't really follow Christian tradition, but it's more similar to Protestant services.
How does Unitarian Universalism relate to some of the other topics we've learned?
So Unitarian Universalism, in a little bit comparison to Christianity, so they actually reject original sin. They don't believe in it. They reject the Trinity. They don't really believe in God, but they say that if there was to be one, it would be a unitary God and not split into 3 people. And in terms of death and heaven, they believe that all people will be reconciled with God no matter what they do on earth. It's just like everyone not necessarily goes to heaven, but everyone will be reconciled with a version of God. And then the best way to kind of summarize their beliefs towards these kind of topics would be, in Unitarian Universalism, congregations, they gather in community to support individual spiritual journeys. They trust that openness to one another's experiences will enhance their understanding of their links with the divine, their history, and with each person individually.
So, what kind of sacred texts and worship centers do they have, Scott?
So they don't actually have their own sacred writings. They actually use all different religions' sacred writings because they believe that there's truth in each of them. So they kind of interpret them as in their own way as really just sources and not actual doctrine and what we should follow. And in terms of worship centers, they have their own churches similar to Christianity, but they don't have the same decorations of Jesus and stuff like that. But they do have their own churches where they serve as groups of congregations.
How does it compare and contrast with some of the other religions, along with Christianity, that we've learned about this quarter, Scott?
So, as I've said kind of throughout the video, there's many comparisons and similarities between Christianity and Unitarian Universalism. But I think the most important thing to say how they're similar is that many Unitarian Universalists take part in all kinds of religious ceremonies. They do sorts of Buddhist meditation. They take part in Jewish Passover, Christmas. Some of them even participate in Ramadan. So they kind of take things from all kinds of different religions, but they also, in their schools, they teach about the divinity of the world in entirety and not just about the Unitarian Universalist community. And they're also allowed to visit any place of worship and take part in their worship, and they do this with extreme variety. They don't necessarily focus on one. And then finally, they usually call themselves fellowships, which is kind of a difference as we call ourselves the Church of Christ. They call themselves fellowships and congregations.
Hi, I'm Nick Krulak.
Hi, I'm Nick Kobrick.
I'm Massimo Wimbush.
Hi, I'm Josh Knapp.
Hi, I'm Orlando Wilson, and we're presenting on Taoism. What is Taoism?
Taoism is the religious tradition of Chinese origin which emphasizes living in harmony with the Tao.
When did it begin?
It began in the year 142 CE with the revelation of Tao to Zhang Daling.
What are the fundamental beliefs?
The core of the basic belief and doctrine of Taoism is Tao, is the origin and law of all things in the universe. Taoists believe that people can become deities or live forever through practicing certain rituals.
Are there any ways of worship and or a lifestyle that is present?
The Taoists believe in a canon. It is a huge book containing over 1,000 volumes. It is an important Taoist text.
What is its viewpoint on death, sin, or other topics of interest?
The Zhongzi emphasizes that death is part of a natural cycle, and that illness, death, and misfortune are inevitable aspects of human life. Thus, they are not punishments for misdeeds or manifestations of evil.
The four basic principles are simplicity, going with the flow, letting go, and harmony. Taoism is loosely based on the writings of a mythical figure, Laozi, who lived some 2,500 years ago.
What are their places of worship or sacred writings?
Most people and followers of Taoism mainly worship in monasteries, which are inhabited by people who have devoted their lives to a strict schedule of worship and ritual observance. Other people also worship in temples, which are the center of rituals open to the lay people. The followers also tend to attend festivals and other events outside of a temple or building of religious significance. Taoists also regard the Tao Te Ching as the essential guide to living a full spiritual and ethical life. They also regard the Chengzi, which is a collection of the wisdom of multiple people.
How does Taoism compare and contrast with Christianity?
Taoism and Christianity conceive the ideal life in distinctly different ways. For a Taoist, the ideal life is to live in harmony with the Tao, the great way of nature. Taoists understand this to be something human beings can achieve on our own. Christians, by contrast, believe the ideal life is found in living accord with the will of God. Doing so is believed to require God's help in the form of grace.
Hey guys, it's Pat. So today we're going to be learning about the religion Zoroastrianism. We're going to be answering 6 main questions. So the first one is, when did it begin? So it actually began in the 6th century. And its founder is Zarathustra. However, in Greek, Zarathustra is Zoroastra, which is where the name Zoroastrianism comes from. And just another note, it predates Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, so it's before that. So the next question is its beliefs. So it actually believes in one god named Ahura Mazda. And it's actually opposed by another god named Angra Mainyu. Alright, next we got worships and lifestyles. So they have a big emphasis on purification and cleanliness. And they also have a coming of age party. Depending on where you live, if you live in India, the coming of age party is at 7, or if you live in Iran, it's at 10. So. And then finally, they have a good emphasis on keeping your life good and keeping things in your life good. So like good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Okay, so next we have their death and their viewpoint. So they do have, like in Christianity, they do have a heaven and a hell, or like an eternal good and an eternal bad. And fire is very important in this religion, because it actually represents Zoroaster's wisdom. They also have burials called sky burials, where they lay the dead person in a tower and they let like birds and things decompose it, and then after they decompose, they bleach the bones and then put them in a pit. So that's just another little note. Sacred writings, they have the Avesta, which is a book of laws. And this book contains like invocations, prayers, and other rituals and things like that they use at certain ceremonies and things like that. And finally, how does it compare to Christianity and other religions? So it's actually said to believe that Christianity, Islam, and Judaism actually were inspired by Zoroastrianism. And because they were the first religion in Asia to have the idea of one supreme God. And finally, other things that are like Christianity, they have like a confession of God or confession to God. They have like God versus evil, heaven and hell, and they also have the end of time as kind of like good versus evil battle. And if you led like a good life, then you would get into their version of heaven, and if you led a bad life, you would get into their version of hell. So confession. Again, heaven and hell. And then, like I said, end of time. So that's just a little bit on Zoroastrianism. Thank you guys for watching, and see you later.